So today we're going to talk about maximizing your reimbursements through your Medicare billing. Now, there are three major pitfalls, but there are also, I would consider them strategies that you need to consider when trying to maximize your reimbursements. Now, the first one is not using the correct modifiers. Okay, so for Medicare, for modifiers, you've got two things to consider. First, you've got your AT modifier. Now, this is for active treatment, right? This is for when the patient's under acute care, their initial phase of care that they're under in your office. We definitely need to make sure we have documentation. We're showing medical necessity. We're actually expecting them to receive improvement or to show improvement in their care based on, whether that's a functional outcome assessment or range of motion. We have to be able to reasonably expect that they're going to have some kind of improvement, or else you don't meet medical necessity for AT care. Now, I know we're talking about reimbursements, but part of maximizing your collections, your overall revenue for Medicare, is when you're using your GA modifier properly. Now, what is a GA? Hopefully you guys are aware of this, but when a patient reaches maximum medical improvement, or when you can no longer justify the AT care because maybe you don't expect improvement, maybe you're just going to maintain them at the level that they're at, that's when they roll into maintenance care. Now, when we give the patient an ABN and let them know, hey, this care is not covered, then we can switch that modifier from the AT to the GA, allowing you to bill Medicare properly. But what's going to happen is Medicare is going to deny it and show it as patient responsibility. Now, why am I including this when we're talking about reimbursements? Because Medicare still dictates what you can collect, even if it's maintenance care. So you can't just tell the patient, hey, your maintenance care, and they don't pay, and you have to pay me. Like, you actually have to have that documented ABN, which is really number 2 on my list. You have to have ABNs, and you have to utilize them properly. So I have other videos talking about like what exactly needs to be in every box of the ABN and why that's important. But without that ABN, you're not legally entitled to use this GA modifier. Okay, and without the GA modifier, Medicare will deny it, and they'll tell you that the patient doesn't owe you anything. So part of being reimbursed properly for that Medicare or for that maintenance care is getting your ABN signed, submitting the claim, and putting that GA modifier so that Medicare will see. The GA tells them. That's what the GA does, is it tells Medicare, hey, I've got an ABN on file that this patient understands that this care is not covered, and they know, and they are expected to pay for it. You have properly informed them ahead of time that they are going to have to pay for that care. And so Medicare will put that as patient responsibility on your EOB, and then you are in your full right to collect your full fee on that. Now, the third is diagnosis. I see this so much. Either I've talked to doctors who were taught in school to put their soft tissue, their visceral condition first and then subluxation. But for Medicare, they require, like if you look it up in the benefit policy manual for Medicare, they require that it's a neuromusculoskeletal condition. Now with that, basically you're going to see your M99.0 something. So that X represents, maybe it's cervical, maybe it's a lumbar area, like maybe it's a thoracic area. So whatever number here will direct, I think 1 is cervical, 2 is thoracic, so on and so forth. Okay, so this has to be the primary diagnosis on your claim, or else Medicare is going to deny it. Again, this is a simple thing. I see a lot of Medicare administrators deny when you do a 1-1 or a 1 something, put an X there, but it has to be an M99.0 whatever region, okay? So having proper diagnosis is going to help support medical necessity. Now, the other thing that I want to say about this, you could just put what the subluxation area is. Like you could just put the claim and say, oh, we're diagnosing them with an M99.01, okay, cervical subluxation. And that could be it. That's all you're going to send to Medicare. However, I do highly, highly recommend that you put those subsequent diagnoses. Do they have pain? Do they have degeneration? Are there any other spinal anomalies that you need to note through your diagnosis to make sure Medicare knows, like, hey, this isn't just a simple neck pain issue. They've got all these other things going on as well. Because what will happen, and I see this, again, far too often, you're submitting active care claims, but maybe you're only using one diagnosis code, Medicare will cut you off eventually. Like you might get 6 or 10 visits paid, and again, that can vary from Medicare administrator to Medicare administrator. So from state to state, this can vary. But so you might get some claims paid, and then all of a sudden they just start denying, and they'll say not medically necessary. And you're like, I don't understand. My diagnosis is right. I got my AT modifier. Why are they denying my claim? Well, it could just be because, hey, they only expect that for this particular diagnosis that you're only going to do so many adjustments to rectify this type of condition versus somebody who has cervical subluxation. They've got degeneration. They've got, maybe it's a low back and they've got a spondylo, things that are more complicated. They will expect that are going to take more time and therefore more visits. So again, to maximize your reimbursements, I want you to go back, look at your modifier usage, make sure you've got those proper ABNs. These for maintenance care are good for 1 year only. Okay, so don't fail to track those. Make sure that you know, hey, when does this one expire? When do I need to have that conversation, have the patient pay the next one, or sign the next one, and then look at your diagnosis. Make sure your doctor is doing their due diligence to diagnose to the greatest level of specificity possible for that particular case, and you will be on your way to increasing your reimbursements for your Medicare claims.